Well, good morning, everyone. Well, and good afternoon to others. My name is Francesca Ortiz, Executive Director of the British Chambers of Commerce in the Dominican Republic. And together with the Caribbean Council, we would like to welcome you all to today's event, the Dominican Republic from Lockdown to Restart and Recovery. As we all know, businesses of all sizes and sectors across every region have been impacted in an unprecedented way by the current pandemic caused by COVID-19. In this webinar, through a panel of recognized experts, we will discuss what actions are required for the recovery and future economic development post-COVID-19, and what are the principal regulatory and economic challenges, and what policies are needed to be addressed to protect business and kickstart the recovery of trade. We will hear now from Elizabeth Ben, Deputy Head of Mission of the British Embassy in Santo Domingo, who will share with us some welcoming remarks on behalf of the British Ambassador, Chris Campbell. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Francesca. Buenos dias a todos. Good morning. Since we're speaking in English today, I'm going to follow that informal British style and just start by giving a really warm welcome to everyone with us today on both sides of the Atlantic, but in particular the distinguished panel of experts who are joining us this morning. It's a real pleasure and an honour to be here representing the British Embassy in Santo Domingo in a virtual, socially distanced way for such a timely and important discussion. I think the most used word of 2020 has been unprecedented, as we've all tried to come to terms with the human, health, and economic impacts of COVID-19. But in this event, we have the chance to start looking forward at how the Dominican Republic's huge potential can be harnessed to rebuild even stronger. We'll need to use all the tools we have at our disposal to restart and recover. Fortunately, here in the Dominican Republic, there are some great tools standing ready to use. The first of these is the Economic Partnership Agreement between the UK and CARIFORUM, which the Dominican Republic signed and has already been approved by the Senate here. We're happy to say we're confident that the new administration supports the agreement, and we look forward to the Diputados approving it as soon as possible. When it comes into effect at the end of this year, it will not only assure a smooth continuation of the trade after the UK sort of formally leaves the EU agreement, but also give us the structure we need to grow that trade even further. And that isn't the only tool we've got. British government funds are available through UK Export Finance, UKEF, which offers up to £750 million to help Dominican consumers to buy UK goods and services for investment projects. And we recently launched our new Trade Partnerships Programme in the Caribbean. That scheme focuses on specialised foods and products, and it helps small and medium enterprises, MIPYMEs, from the Dominican Republic to grow their exports to the UK market. So as we come out of lockdown, we can start to plan for an ambitious recovery, for a green recovery, and for a recovery where we work together closer than ever. Thank you to all the panelists who have so kindly agreed to share their expertise with us today. And I hope that you all enjoy the event. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Well, now I have the pleasure to introduce our panelists. We have with us César Vargán. César is a lawyer with a master's degree in French, European, and International Business Law at the University Panteón Assas País II. In 2008, he was appointed as Ambassador's Executive Secretary of the National Commission for Trade Negotiations. In 2011, he served as Vice Minister for Economic Affairs and Trade Negotiations at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Dominican Republic. And in 2016, he served as Director General of Foreign Trade of the Dominican Republic. Since 2017, he has been the Executive Vice President of the National Council of Private Enterprise, CONEP, organization that brings together most of the private companies in the Dominican Republic. Welcome, César. We also have Jacqueline Mora, a well-known economist with a Master on Financial Economics and Postgraduate Studies in Pure Mathematics. She worked as a consultant for the United Nations Development Program as sub-coordinator of the first report on human development of the Dominican Republic. Also, she was an economist at the World Bank, where she became involved on issues of economic analysis, poverty, and catastrophic risks for the Caribbean region. She has been an economic advisor to both the private and public sector. In 2011, she founded Analytica, a consultant company on issues of economic analysis and strategy. Welcome, Jacqueline. We also have the pleasure to have with us Simon Suarez, a 14-year tourism industry veteran, recognized as one of the leaders for the Caribbean region and has been at the forefront of developing the Dominican Republic's tourism products. He is the recipient of the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association's 2017 Caribbean Hotelier of the Year Award. He was Chief Development Representative for Hilton Worldwide, in charge of new hotel developments for the 9 Hilton brands in Central America and the Caribbean. Former President of the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association, he has also served for years on the board of the Hotel and Tourism Association of the Dominican Republic, where he was elected President for the 2014-16 term. Vice President of Public Affairs and Special Projects at Grupo Punta Cana. Welcome, Simon. Also, we have Cristina Irvin-Turner. She is the Business Specialist for Latin America and the Caribbean at the Department of International Trade. This role is based in the UK and is the face of DIT LATAC for UK businesses with a specific remit to actively promote and trade between UK and Latin America and the Caribbean. Cristina graduated from the University of Sheffield with a degree in Hispanic Studies and English Literature, and as part of this, focused on the cultural output importance of the Caribbean. Prior to DIT, Cristina was the business manager for Latin America and the Caribbean at Emerald Publishing. Welcome, Cristina. And we have the pleasure to have with us Chris Bennett, Managing Director of the Caribbean Council, who will moderate this panel. Chris? Chris, you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Francesca, and thank you very much for the kind introduction and for putting together such an amazing event and audience for today. If I could just say a couple of words of introduction before we start the event. We, the Caribbean Council, have been around for many decades, and we support trade and investment between the Caribbean and the UK and Europe. And we do events, seminars, webinars, and one of our longest standing collaborators has been the BritCham in Santo Domingo, with whom we had a relationship since the 1980s. And I can only imagine that they would have never have dreamt that we would be all speaking together on this facility today. And it really is a sign of the future, and I think a really positive and optimistic way of how we can all work together so much better in the future and closer. This is the 10th webinar we've done for our members, and we've covered all sorts of different sectors. And of course, primary for the Caribbean is the tourism industry and economic recovery, which I'm glad we're going to be addressing today. I think the UK has perhaps got some lessons to learn from our own experience, and I know that Christina's going to touch on those. We've got some tremendous positives in terms of our vaccine program, which has been looking like a great success. Perhaps some not so positive stories in terms of the implementation of our own lockdown, which some might argue was too late. And also a very interesting approach to the economic recovery, where the government learned from the lessons from 2008 and has put huge amounts, unprecedented amounts of public money into the pockets of ordinary people across the UK to try to avoid a recession. And it's still too early to see whether that will have had the necessary effect, but at the current time there are around 9 million British people of the working population who are having their wages subsidised by the government or paid by the government, which is about 1 in 3 British workers, which is quite extraordinary. So there's been huge amounts of money thrown at the problem, and we're hoping that from August, September time, as those types of relief start to be pulled back, that more money will be offered and new schemes have been offered, which have been announced by the Treasury recently. Anyway, today isn't about the UK, it's very much about the Dominican Republic, and we're delighted to have such a fantastic panel. And I'd like to first of all ask Cesar Barragán to talk a bit about his perspective on economic recovery and the perspective from the private sector in the Dominican Republic. Cesar.
Thank you very much, Chris. And on your behalf, I would like to thank the Caribbean Council, especially the BritchM, Francesca, and the whole team of the BritchM. Also on the British Embassy in the Dominican Republic, Elizabeth, and the whole team of good friends at the British Embassy. I'm very delighted to be part of this conversation today, this morning. And more than that, to be accompanied by Simon Suarez, who is a reference because of his credentials and experience in the touristic sector, and an outstanding economist or former economist, now recently appointed Vice Minister of Tourism, my good friend Jacqueline Mora. And also Christina, it's good to be with you today at this space. I would like to focus on three main aspects of the current situation on my opening remarks. Where do we come from? Where are we at as of today? And what's the forecast? Where are we heading? What's the future on this situation from the Dominican Republic private sector perspective? Where do we come from? We're a country that has had a outstanding behavior of the economy. Over the last 25 years, we have had a growth of around 5.3% of our GDP. And taking into account the last 5 years, is 6.3% growth of our GDP. 2018 was outstanding. We had a 7% growth of our GDP. And this year, projections were, as last year, around 5.5% of our GDP. So our economic behavior has been outstanding. Our political stability is the second factor that has helped for this to happen. After a turbulent political transition that followed a 31-year dictatorship, we have had continuous democratic elections since 1962. That's a period of 58 years of political stability. But what happened this year? What happened in 2020? A virus that was identified in China in December 2019 spread throughout the globe and the world stopped. DR is no exception. The first case here was identified in our country in March. And as of today, 4 months after, more than 56,000 Dominicans have been confirmed with COVID-19. And unfortunately, more than 1,000 Dominicans have died. Over 1 million Dominicans, Dominican workers have been affected on their jobs, and thousands of companies have either closed or reduced operations because of this situation. We have seen very serious effects on tourism, on exports, and on foreign investment. Good news is that the remittance have grown, and that's in direct connection with the social programs that are taking place abroad and that are benefiting the Dominican diaspora and their solidarity with their families here in the country. This is a major crisis of unprecedented effects. However, we must never forget that the center of this crisis is a sanitary situation. In the case of the DR, the combination of the health crisis with the social and economic effects has also been combined with a political situation. We've had elections this year, and we are facing a change of governments on the next weeks. However, as long as we don't identify a vaccine or a certain control of the pandemic, this is going to be our new normal. And that's why from the private sector, we've tried to be proactive in two ways. First, on the attention to the sanitary situation and supporting the strengthening of the capacity of our health system by mobilizing resources, both individually by companies, but also through a philanthropic trust administered by the CONEP, and that has put in effect millions of dollars to strengthening our capacity. Also by acquiring and donating COVID tests and processing machines, PPEs and ventilators, medicines, and food. However, we have also presented a proposal for a safe and efficient reopening of the economy, and that took place in May. And it was concentrated in three phases. First, we identified the necessity of a lockdown that we foresee in time for 8 weeks in order to minimize the exposure of the general population, but with a special attention to those in a vulnerable situation, those that are on an age of risk or those that have another clinical condition. We estimate that between 1.5 million or 2 million Dominicans are on this condition. Second, on the health part, on the first phase, identifying the metrics and indicators that go beyond the cases identified in the country. We understand that you have to follow up very closely on the rates of hospitalization, the critical attention, and the deaths. And third, in order to control that part, curfew restrictions and the state of emergency that we had for several weeks. On the second phase, the reopening, we should have expected, as it happened, more cases. But if we protect the vulnerable population, the number of deaths should be maintained in a controlled status. That's why we propose a traffic light system of restrictions, red, yellow, and green, that depending on the effects of the pandemic on the territory, could enter into effect. In that sense, measuring metrics in order to apply the restrictions within the affected territory could decide if it was going to be local, regional, or at the national level. This requires also very special attention to our economy, but to the wide scope. Not only those, as it happened in other countries, that you could segment parts of the economy opening first, others later. Our attention was to all sectors with low risk level, and especially those in capacity to generate jobs, to be part of the productive chain, and to contribute to generate currency and GDP. Mainly the construction, the national and the free zone manufacturing industries, the commerce, and the agriculture. Also, very special attention to the SMEs that have been seriously affected, and with resources and a guarantee fund that will permit them to subsist under this situation. Assuring a good functioning and liquidity of our financial system is also a priority at this stage, and identifying and proactively accessing to the funds that are required for all the social funds and economic assistance programs that are in effect. We foresee in the mid and long term constant monitoring of the sanitary situation, and also assisting and supporting sectors that will have a slower capacity of recovery. I refer directly to the tourism sector that will be all throughout the calendar on this process, and I'm sure that Simon will talk about it later today. Where are we heading? We on the political side, that as I mentioned, we've seen a positive and a smooth transition process between the government that's stepping down and the government that will assume on August next year. That's a good signal. And we are currently starting a new phase of lockdown that started this week, and it's necessary in order to control the advances that we have been facing. 4 priorities are in our agenda. First of all, the sanitary situation, to keep increasing, even if it's possible, the number of tests and guaranteeing the capacity of the sanitary system to respond to those that are affected. Second, saving and creating jobs. As I mentioned, we have over 1.3 Dominican workers that are currently affected of this situation, and we don't want them to lose their jobs. So more assistance direct through the programs that have been established directly to the workers, but also assistance to companies that can guarantee that these jobs will be maintained. Third, stimulating the economy and generating foreign currency through the sectors that I have mentioned, and taking decisions at the administrative level that could help this recovery move on. 4, guaranteeing the required funding, both adjusting the national budget that would take place, but also identifying international resources that can be accessed by the Dominican Republic in order to guarantee the sustainability of this process throughout the time. And 5th, attention to Congress. There's several bills that are being now processed that can help this situation, and also can guarantee in the mid and long term our development. So I think that as an initial remark, we are living a time of uncertainty, but we have to be clear that it is not something that we have decided, and it's not only something of the Dominican Republic, it's part of a global situation, and looking forward that all together we can move on.
Thank you very much, Cesar. I can't remember who said it to me recently, but we're all in the same storm together. We're all different boats, but we're all being affected by the same storm. And I think it's we're all of these same issues are being faced by countries across the globe, and familiar challenges. And you know, it's great to hear the way your private sector is playing its role in addressing them in the DR, and you know, I hope that there may be some ways in which collaboration with the UK can help strengthen your efforts. Can I now turn to Jacqueline, Vice Minister. Jacqueline, over to you.
Hello, good morning, and good afternoon, and thank a lot to the British Chamber for the invitation. To share our point of view in this challenging scenario. Okay, saying whatever in this challenging scenario is a risk, but at the same time, I think we are in a great opportunity to innovate, to accelerate changes, to transform ourselves and our economies. And I think there is a point of view we need to have. First of all, something I was not supposed to say, but I need to. We are never former economists. We are all economists. Not former, but an economy and whatever it takes. But nothing. I think, and I will start as soon as possible. I think like other economies, like other Latin American economies, world economies, the Dominican Republic, as Cesar stated very well, has received a very important impact with the pandemic. Okay, growth expectation for this year, as Cesar stated, maybe are between -3%, -6%, with unemployment rate doubling this year from 6 to 12%. And the bad news that like in all economies is that this unemployment would be concentrated in poorest family and younger employees, because really the layoff cost of these people is lower than the other part of the economy. And there is a challenge for the government, and that I think is the main challenge with the impact in fiscal authorities, with the impact in public finance. The current account deficit will reach 4%. There is not a high current account deficit. We have a history of very low current account deficit due to tourism, due to remittances, due to gold. And 4% we think is not bad, but it's going to increase. On the tourism side, maybe Don Simon would talk better about it, but maybe we're expecting occupancy rate less than 30%. We are coming from 80% of occupancy rates. There is a huge impact on the investment in the sector. Maybe we are expecting a RevPAR to go from 150 to 42 this year, and not getting over until 2022. Okay, and I think this is the second big challenge we have in the economy. Remittances, as Cesar Dargan just said, is a very important source of foreign exchange and have shown a stability over time. In other recession, it has shown a stability. And we do not expect a reduction, and maybe the reduction could be around 2%, 3%. It's not a big deal for this year. Monetary authorities has responded with a strong support. In the Dominican Republic, the monetary authority has implemented a lot of measures for the financial sector to continue serving as a distribution mechanism to support small and medium-sized enterprises and other key sectors. And also, the monetary authorities has allowed for a more fluctuation in the currency as a mechanism to distribute the cost over all sectors and all population. For example, in the last 10 years, we have shown a depreciation of 3.5%, and for this year, we are having like 15% depreciation rate, which serve as a help mechanism for the economies itself. The pandemic found us with a weak public finance. Okay, we had 50% of our GDP public debt. That is not a very high public debt for an economy like the Dominican Republic. It's considered to be not a low. It's not that high, but it's high. And we are expecting this year that public debt over GDP ratio to increase from 8 to 10% only in 1 year. That is huge. That is huge because our public finance depends a lot on the external financing of this deficit. That is, I think, the third big challenge that we have from this year and 2021 also. But certainly, I think the most affected would be the poorest household, and therein the importance of the fiscal support. There is I think there is a very high hope in the population that the new government finds the ways to continue supporting that vulnerable population household, but also manage an opening that must be led by the government, because it must be led with the public investment, attraction of foreign investment, intermittent but constant openness. We know it's going to be intermittent, but it has to be a constant openness. Security in tourism, security, personal, COVID security, but we need an aggressive, very aggressive strategy, and Don Simon, I think we'll talk about it, to take advantage of the opportunities we are having out there to help our tourism sector, that it's going to be one of the leaders in the next year to the recuperation of the economy. This should be done hand by hand with a health strategy that puts the priorities on tourism poles, undoubtedly. All of this, we are asking the government, would result in a prevailing fiscal and other reforms the country needs. Some people talk about going hand by hand with the IMF, for example, is something that we should think about it. How we work together, we walk together with the IMF in the next 3 years to manage all the situation. But also the situation found us with some advanced strategy, okay? And I would say only 2 good strategies that they are in the front door of the economy right now. First is the new law of private and public partnership that was approved this year, and that it's called to be a main vehicle to help government and investment in the Dominican Republic. And second, we have a detailed, well-prepared development on the tourism strategy for the southern pole of the country. And I think that it's also a good news in this situation. I think any recovery strategy needs to start by knowing how is the total demand of the Dominican economy formed, okay? For example, we know that 55% of our total demand comes from household consumption. Therefore, the impact of unemployment, it's a big and huge impact on private sector. Second, 18% comes from private investment. And that private investment, it's essentially, a great share is household investment, which is also affected, household investment, housing, which is also affected by the unemployment. 20% is external demand, export of goods and services, including tourism, and 8% is government demand. When you analyze these numbers, you say, wow, internal consumption, local consumption is the main strategy we need to develop. But this does not take into account what I said is the value change of external consumption. when you take into consideration the value change of tourism, the value change of free trade zones, the value change of gold, the value change of other exports, then it happens that external demands represent 4 of every $10 in the Dominican Republic. And that means that you need to put a lot of attention in that external demand. For example, in the case of tourism, I mean, tourism represents really 15% of total GDP. That is calculated by the WTTC. 15% of total GDP. In the Caribbean, we are one of the economies with a higher impact of tourism, taking into account from direct to indirect and to the demand impact of tourism. And that represents around 13% of employment also. So our external sector is an important as our external sector is as important as our internal sector, and also government. But another thing we need to think about is our relationship with the United States. United States today, 41% of our tourism is 73% of our remittances. It's 70% of our free trade zones, exports. We need diversification in the medium term, but in the short term, we need to deal with that opportunity, but also with that risk, taking into consideration what is happening in the United States. And finally, and we need to think about that the success story that Dargan was talking when he talked is that our success is not, has been planned. We have had a lot of reforms in the 20 years, okay, in all sectors, which has a lot of obstacles to collapse and to move on the economy. Although the tax reform has been the largely absent reform, and I think this scope is urgently talking about, we need to implement it. Having said all of this, we have, from the economic point of view, think that we need to rest in 6 fundamental pillars, okay? We have 6 fundamental pillars. The first one, I think, is access to external capital. Government with debt and private with foreign direct investment. In the short term, government needs to access international credit to maintain strong public investment, along and focus on investment to attract private investment. Infrastructure that serve as a starting point to make private investment more attractive, but also resources to continue to expand the health sector. Okay, if we want to help the people, if we want to help the tourism, we need a good and big and sufficient health infrastructure in place. I think this should be accompanied by a fiscal council and some commitments to a fiscal reform in order for all of that external capital to go with us in this trip. Second, I think regarding foreign investment, we need to accelerate projects that are already in the pipeline, projects that have not been stopped by this COVID. Okay, still we have projects on the mining sector, important projects waiting to go on. We have investment on ports project also. And we have also in the electricity sector. So I think first thing is to say, okay, what is the foreign investment that is on the door, and let it in. Also, we need to think that in the case of free trade zones, we need to make changes. We need to start attracting what is called investment in free trade zones, but in the local change of the free trade zones. I mean, what is called the global value change is making a lot of changes, okay? The global value strategy, it's suffering a lot of change because of COVID. Now we need to attract another part of this chain to make the chain larger in the Dominican Republic and to keep capital flow into the economy. Third, we need to support tourism sector. strengthening the tourism experience at all points, the health infrastructure at all poles, procedures, and supports today the sector to secure tomorrow and to manage currency stability, since with remittances are the main source of currency, of foreign currency in the Dominican Republic. Fourth, we need to keep supporting the financial sector. The guarantee fund for financial losses needs to be implemented to ensure liquidity, to support SMEs. That is a key factor, and this sector is a fundamental ally and has been a fundamental ally in the last 15 years. Fifth, an intermittent but gradual and constant opening of the economy, hand by hand with the private sector, and prioritizing some sectors like constructions, mining, agriculture, food manufacturing and food trade, energy, and health. I think this sector, we are a very diversified economy, very diversified. But I think 6 sectors has a low impact on the contagion, but also have a low impact on creating jobs and supporting the growth of the economy. And finally, as Cesar said, and I think it's crucial for the success of all of this, is to generate a strong and coordinated government team. I wrote this 1 week ago, okay? Is to generate, and I still believe that this is a challenge, is to generate a strong and coordinated government team that allow the strategy and effort to be aligned toward a common result. Today, you need an alliance team to make all of this happen. Thank you very much.
Well, Vice Minister, thank you very, very much. What a fantastic tour de force that was. And I think President Abinader is very lucky to have you on his team. It's brilliant. And I've noticed over the last couple of decades that British Prime Ministers tend to have a 5-point plan. I see you're even busier with a 6-point plan. So yeah. You've got it sorted. Well, congratulations. All right, well, let's pass on to our final speaker. Sorry, not final speaker, our third speaker, Simon Suarez. Over to you, Simon.
Thank you very much, Chris. And I also want to give my thanks to the British Chamber and to the Caribbean Council and the British Embassy and all of you who have put together this activity. Conscious of time, I think I will just dive right into my remarks without pointing out, though, that Jacqueline says that once an economist, always an economist. I've always said that I gave up my economic degree when I started in tourism. And I still think that that's the case. So I'm no longer an economist, and certainly not when she speaks before I do. I think that well, you have the preceding speakers have really made a very complete painted a complete picture of the situation where we find ourselves and also of the opportunities. And I'm going to concentrate in the tourism sector and really discuss very particular points that need to be addressed and that need to be addressed in a relatively short term. It seems like for months we thought that we would be facing a V-shaped recovery, but I think we are now facing a U-shaped curve in the recovery, and the shape of that U, or the point of inflection, is still not clear, at least in the tourism sector. And I think this is really a reflection of the reality of the COVID process, which really brings surprises by the day. And you know, if the IMF projected initially in March that the effect of the COVID shock on the Dominican economy would keep us at zero growth, and three months later, we're talking about an impact that could go from anywhere from 3 to 6 negative. So and honestly, every day I get closer to the 6% figure as my sort of personal planning figure. I think we must address the Dominican tourism reconstruction in the immediate future, and thinking that there are quite a few realities that we have to face with. First of all, the fundamentals of the tourism industry internationally have been compromised. I mean, we're seeing airlines that are going under. We're seeing tour operators that are requiring massive support to stay afloat. And basically major international hotel chains are scrambling to survive. That is a reality that we have to be cognizant of. The local productive structure that supports tourism has also been equally damaged. And that is a big concern of ours, because essentially those are small and medium-term companies that will not have enough oxygen for a protracted recovery process. And also we have to be aware that we had not recovered in the market from the 2019 media crisis. January and February figures, January and 2020 figures for arrivals were actually, January and February, were the two lowest growth rates. In fact, the highest reduction in growth rates, monthly reduction in growth rates that we saw since the beginning of the media crisis in June of 2019, with the exception of the month of August, which was the August of 2019. So basically, we are starting in a weak position to start with. And the most important point that I think we have to be aware of is that the pandemic is not under control. And especially under control by the standards of the traveling public. We do not have practical tests. We do not have a definitive and reliable clinical treatment protocol. And definitely we won't see a vaccine for a year. A vaccine that is sufficiently widespread to be useful. So essentially, right now we are still in a situation where there is a fear to travel, and we are not providing clear information to arrest that fear of travel. I was just looking at some statistics for Canada of yesterday, which indicate that the Canadian traveling public, only 20% say that they're ready to travel when the Canadian government authorizes them to travel. That is very, very low, very, very low, because evidently you have an 80% populace that is a traveler, and yet for various reasons is not ready to even consider traveling. The initial response of the markets after the July 1st opening has been affected by all sorts of obstacles. In the case of the Dominican Republic, we did not help the situation because we provided the markets with very unclear, incomplete, and untimely guidance with regards to protocols and requirements. And that has had an effect. And the effect is that since July 1st when we opened, and I'm going just to share information from the Punta Cana International Airport because we're still into the middle of the month. But as of July 21st, the Punta Cana Airport had received 138 flights, which equals to 8.5% of the flights we received in July of 2019. Punta Cana had received 13,550 passengers, which is 6.6% of what we received in July at the same time last year. That again has been matched by a very cautious process on hotel openings. Of the 42,000 hotel rooms in the Punta Cana, Bávaro, Vero Alto region, only 6,700 have actually opened. So essentially, the reopening has seen only a 16% increase in the use of the inventory. And the reports, which are still not official, is that the occupancy level of those hotels ranges between 7 and 12%. So reopening is still very, very much an experiment this time. Of course, the biggest concern is that this level of reopening is reflected, this level of operation is reflected in the employment situation in the sector. And that is really the biggest concern. We really have to still maintain the support structure that has been set up to guarantee paychecks for the employees. Because of the situation of the surge that we've seen, we have to also see where our source markets lie. And in that respect, the US still has a runaway pandemic. Canada, UK, and the European Union countries do not allow their nationals to travel to the Dominican Republic without compulsory quarantine requirements. And more importantly, probably, just to underscore the general uncertainty of the situation, is that most Caribbean destinations that opened before the Dominican Republic are either rolling back or creating health barriers to make their leisure travel less attractive. So to address this situation, the Dominican hospitality industry has to have two basic things in the very, very short term. First, we have to focus on contributing to bring the epidemic under control. And secondly, and simultaneously, we've got to devise what I call a COVID story-based marketing strategy to be displayed for the rest of 2020. This will allow us to expect gradual recovery to begin the first quarter of 2021. And to be telling you this today is quite a change, because 60 days ago, we were all banking that we would be recovering in time for the summer season. Today, we have lost the summer season, and we know that the fall season is our softest season always. So really, we have to look beyond the rest of the year in order to start preparing ourselves for a recovery. I think these two objectives require unprecedented collaboration between the public sector and the tourism industry. We have got to establish a very dynamic interchange of talent and resources from both the public and the private sector. And that is something that we have always wanted, and that is something that we are now compelled to achieve. So we have got to do that. it's really fairly well documented that the COVID situation in tourism regions in the Dominican Republic is significantly closer to control than in the heavily populated non-touristic areas of the Dominican Republic. So we propose that the travel and tourism businesses in each municipality, along with the local business sector and private hospitals, ally with the public entities in the municipalities that are controlling the epidemic in order to establish a pool of resources and bring the epidemic under control at the local municipal level. That is a major change in strategy, and it is definitely a major change in attitude on the part of the tourism sector, because as I have said many times, we finally have to get out of the hotels and go into the community. Well, the hotels are closed, so we have to be in the community now, and we have to commit to commit our resources and our talent in this effort. Now, this mechanism has already begun working in Punta Cana, Bávaro, where the hotels, the destination management entities, amenities providers, service companies, the NGOs, and the community leaders have all come together and joined the local Ministry of Health authorities, the Red Cross, Civil Defense, Ministry of Defense, police, and the municipality to implement a coordinated COVID management plan designated specifically for the local challenges. And aside from bringing the epidemic under control, this community group will work in implementing and fine-tuning the health and safety protocols at airports, hotels, restaurants, excursions, local transport, and in general, all the touch points of the tourist. The final goal of this community effort is to be able to offer to the international markets a well-proven COVID-ready community. Now, this cooperative model has to be replicated in the rest of the Dominican Republic, in Romana, Valladolid, Puerto Plata, Cabarete, Samaná, so that all of the traditional tourism destinations that have the current infrastructure are all COVID-ready communities as soon as possible. And this means that they've got to achieve this in the fourth quarter of 2020. Now, the COVID-ready communities will be the linchpin of the COVID story-based marketing strategy. The idea is that health authorities, the Ministry of Tourism, and the hospitality industry produce an official narrative of the tourism sector's COVID readiness. This should be in the form of clear and thorough health protocols, well rehearsed and efficiently applied. We have the protocols. Protocols were published July 1st, but they need to be well rehearsed and efficiently applied. We also need well-developed procedures for entry and exit in the country. And we need clearly defined and readily available healthcare system for tourists to be offered in a way that the visitor will understand the ways in which their health will be preserved at the destination. This narrative should then be well disseminated through the appropriate channels and in the source markets in order to induce the return to the Dominican Republic. Now, the collaboration between health authorities, the Ministry of Tourism, and the hospitality industry should also tackle a direct dialogue with health authorities in each of our source markets: UK, US, Canada, Germany, Spain, France, Italy, the rest of the European Union, in order to negotiate bilateral sanitary corridors. They've been called travel bridges or travel bubbles. Now, these negotiations should include the airlines and tour operators present in these source markets, because they will be our natural allies. And we've got to produce this structure of of travel corridors between now and November of this year. Finally, as a complement to this effort in relaunching the tourism, the post-COVID world, Dominican public and private sector collaboration should also establish a dialogue with the tourism destinations in the Caribbean basin to discuss ways to strengthen the Caribbean brand as a desirable destination. And I would look at the new relationship of the Economic Partnership Agreement as a very good channel for this effort to the British former partners in the Caribbean. This will allow the Caribbean brand to be established as a desirable destination and attractive for island hopping and intra-Caribbean air traffic. Now, consolidation of the Caribbean brand will be achieved if all of us agree on common entry and exit requirements and protocols for all destinations, like the European Union has. And we'd also have to agree on the adoption of safe and seamless travel technology to do away with the bureaucracy of intra-Caribbean travel, without compromising control and security, of course. And finally, establishing a public-private Caribbean marketing fund to raise awareness of the Caribbean as an amalgam of diverse destinations, all individually attractive. Now, this is my vision for the way out. It's also the way I think that we will be able to navigate from the current lockdown to restart and recovery. Thank you very much, and I'm open for your questions when it's ready.
Thank you so much, Simon. That was a fantastic overview of the very many challenges for the industry, and as you've said, you've in many ways had to rewrite your plans in the last week as things have substantially changed with the recent announcement of a new lockdown and effectively an end to the summer season. So challenging times indeed, but you've identified many solutions, I think, or ways of at least ameliorating the worst impacts that this may have on us. Let me pass finally across to Christina Irving-Turner, who's going to give us a perspective from the UK. Over to you, Christina.
Hi, thank you, Chris. Thank you again to the BritchamDR Dominican Republic, to the British Embassy, and to the Caribbean Council for inviting me to speak today. It's a real privilege and an honour to speak alongside the very esteemed guests and panellists that we have today. So to close today's event, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have prepared a few slides, and what I can do is I can share those with you afterwards, because there's quite a few links on there. I think first of all, I'd really like to start by saying, you know, that what the UK has done has focused on several areas, and as the panelists have said, it's really there's been a lot that's been going on. But I think with specific responses to COVID-19, what I'd like to focus on is particularly life sciences, infrastructure, a clean and green recovery, and security, and to really urge you to think about working with us. I know Cesar spoke about the need for stimulating foreign investment, and certainly, and what Rebecca talked about as well for UKEF, the UK Economic Fund, and also the trade and development and the economic partnerships. They're certainly all there. So if you do have any questions about those, then please do contact us. I think for specific responses to COVID, things that we have to think about, if we start off with life sciences, is that we're already starting from quite a strong base in the UK with an ecosystem around innovation, development, commercialization, and then access to patients through a national healthcare system, so the NHS. And so from that, we've had kind of a strong place to really take that forward. And alongside that, we've had emerging areas such as med tech, data and digital-based technologies, including telemedicine. All of these have been already informing and changing the sector enormously. And then you bring COVID along and the need for this data, the medical technology, and of course, telemedicine is stronger than ever. So we've already been pushing in those areas and maybe accelerated perhaps a speed that we previously unanticipated. But some real kind of COVID-19 initiatives that I want to highlight, and certainly some of these you've heard about already, is the ventilator challenge. So this was when businesses, that particularly manufacturing, that could change or adapt their business model to create more ventilators. That this was something that was set out, and you may have heard about a similar initiative from UCL as well, where they was unpatented. And Rebecca spoke about, that unprecedented was a real word of the pandemic, and I'd also say that pivoted is of that same vernacular, and that's really what this represents. Another initiative that I think is very strong is the NHS COVID-19 vaccine registry, and this is, we've heard about all the great strides that Oxford University are doing to look for a vaccine, as alongside many other things that are happening globally and even in the Caribbean themselves. What I think is particularly pertinent about this registry is that this has become kind of a civic responsibility, where individuals can register to trial the vaccine, to see if it will work, to take it forward. And this is something that's taken on with volunteers, and this came out in the news earlier this week. And then, of course, another major measure that we did was reduce the import relief on medical goods to ensure the flow of those could come through, from PPE and through to equipment that was essential. So we were able to adapt quickly and proactively to look at the trade and how we were working with that. And of course, as I said, this is all based on kind of a strong innovation ecosystem and healthcare system. And we're still taking this forward. And if any of you are particularly interested, we've been running some webinars about the UK industrial strategy and pathway forward for innovation. So looking to collaborate is certainly something that we're continuing to do throughout this pandemic. And you may have heard as well, moving on to infrastructure, two really key phrases were alliteration. It's very strong. We've had build, 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 and build back better. And I think that this is really coming down to infrastructure as a key tenet of economic recovery. And this is something that many countries are looking at. And when Cesar talked about saving and creating jobs, this is certainly what the UK is looking at. So there's been £5 billion of capital investment projects, and that's looking at hospital maintenance, improvements to road networks, and school rebuilding, just to name a few. And when the new Vice Minister, Jacqueline, spoke about, a strong healthcare infrastructure, that's certainly something that we've seen, and building on those. And this approach is, I would say, quite typical. It's something that we've seen across Latin America, with Peru and Chile also looking at this, with working towards the UK government intention to publish a national infrastructure strategy in autumn 2020. And this is something that has really been received very well by the business community. The corporate leaders group was urged and encouraged governments to look at this resilience. With that, was have over 250 signatures from leading names in the business sector. And I think really for the Dominican Republic, we've spoken about this in the infrastructure and stimulating foreign economy and certain funds that are available. And so we're thinking about improvements to water structure and transportation networks are also potential areas to think about. And Jacqueline mentioned about ports as well. I think the other side of this is looking about, building back better and a green recovery. And certainly in the UK, I would say that we have three major strengths within this. And firstly, we're looking at renewable energy. So offshore wind, energy from waste, smart energy, and electrical networks. So these are areas, if you're looking to build a grid and strengthen the grid, that in the UK we have a focus on. And certainly, and we thought not only the energy, but using energy smartly. And one of the initiatives that we're looking at is for home building and home insulation. Not necessarily an issue in the fabulous Caribbean island, but certainly in the UK with capricious weather, those types of things are needed. And another and very important sector, and certainly something that all our speakers spoke about, was funding. and private investment. And in the UK, we are the centre, a global centre for green finance, whether that's the structuring of financial packages to allow commercially viable renewable projects to take off internationally, raising capital for these, but also the surround supporting services such as the legal, the accounting, and those insurance needs. Particularly London is the centre for that, and the UK, and we really want to build and grow on that. And kind of the final pillar, I would say, is low carbon transport, whether that be electric vehicles or changing the infrastructure or thinking about changes in public transport with electric buses, and certainly as well kind of more sustainable mobility. So thinking more about how we incorporate cycling and walking, and certainly within the centre of Santo Domingo in the Casco, you know, the pedestrianised area is beautiful, and we're thinking about how we can take that forward. Obviously, attitudes towards public transport with COVID are changing, but certainly the infrastructure and how we adapt that infrastructure is incredibly important. And then finally, kind of the last element that I'd like to touch on really is security. And we really see that security exports are going to be a fundamental part of the UK's economic prosperity. The UK is the fourth largest exporter globally and the biggest in Europe. And at the heart and centre of this are SMEs, so small to medium-sized enterprises. And all three speakers spoke about the importance of these small businesses. And this is something in an area in the UK, just to take that as an example. And there are 9,000 UK security companies that are small to medium-sized businesses. And at the heart of those is really the quality and rapid innovation. And it's within two areas with security really that I think are particularly important, and that's the cyber and then the secure and the actual security side. And we see this as really being a business to business. So when we talk about uplifting the private sector, it's really kind of in this area that we can take as a great example. And cybersecurity being more important ever as people have gone to work pretty much digitally and from home overnight at rapid expanses, but also if Simon's comments, you know, about streamlining into Caribbean travel, a lot of that will be about processes and showing that they're safe, that they can be done safely online and digitally. But also when he discussing about kind of feeling safe within kind of the tourism and large events. So temperature checks at airports, in hotels, at large events, at sporting events. How can these elements that haven't necessarily been thought about within these sectors, they're coming into this now, and hopefully that will then go towards building trust, which will go towards building consumer spending. And of course, and this is based in the security side. So what I really just wanted to close on and say is I've just picked out some of the main areas. Obviously, this is a health crisis. So looking at our health sciences, infrastructure, and there's Build Back Better and Build are incredibly important, but thinking about how we do that in a green way and a safe and secure way going forward. So if you do have any questions about what the UK is doing, or if and you see the synergies between
I think we may have lost Christina for a moment. Let me, I think she was drawing to a conclusion. If she comes back, we can, Christina, are you there? Perhaps we can ask Christina if she has any final things she wants to say when she manages to regain the connection. We'll move on to the question and answer session. We've got about half an hour or just under half an hour left for a discussion with the panelists. Unfortunately, Jacqueline has had to leave for an urgent meeting, and I guess this is part of her new life as a minister. So good to see that she's already very busy. We've got the opportunity to ask questions either through the chat box on the side of your screens, or if you prefer, you can flag up a blue hand next to your name, and we'll then unmute your microphone so you can ask the question directly. So if I can ask you all to have a look at that now and ask any questions you might have. We also have some questions that have been sent to us in advance, which I'll address as well in parallel. While you're thinking about that, please do also have a look at the poll we've done, which is asking about people's confidence for a quick recovery for the Dominican Republic, and it would be great to get your thoughts on that, and we can perhaps ask the panelists their thoughts on the extent of the response. I hope Elizabeth will also stay with Christina on the panel so that we can join in discussion, and Francesca as well, of course. Christina, you got cut off, so did you want to just finish your remarks? I know you were coming to an end anyway, I think.
I was just going to say that if there are any questions afterwards, then me and myself and our team, Gerson and Joshua in the DR, are more than happy to help and continue to take any of that forward. And I did send to Francesca ahead of this session some slides and information so people can consult that later if they're interested as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think as you've reflected in your remarks, the UK has been going through a sort of introspective moment, I think, over the past few months, where we are reassessing some of our priorities and the way that we live our lives, and whether we could be traveling less, moving less, which may have consequences for tourism destinations. And you know, I think that's one of the things that we all need to be thinking about. What are the changes in the way people will be living their lives? And certainly some of those things are around climate change and around living in a more digital way, in the digital economy. I've got a couple of questions just to kick things off, and they're quite tourism focused, but if any of you want to have a stab at them, please do. The first one is, none of you spoke at all about airlines, and international airlines in particular, and how they may come out of this. Obviously, airlift is absolutely fundamental to the tourism sector. Are you concerned about some of these bigger carriers going out of business? Do you think that that is also a longer term risk? I mean, coming out of Europe, you've got tour operators which are teetering or have gone bust. You've got airlines like British Airways, which is looking at savaging its route network. You know, does that have a potential impact on Punta Cana's route, for example? And then I suppose a corollary of that is the cruise sector. I don't think you've spoken about. The cruise sector is obviously probably one of the worst hit by the pandemic. I know that as a proportion compared to other Caribbean jurisdictions, Dominican Republic receives less cruise per capita perhaps, but it's still an important facet, and I'd be interested in your comments on that. And then perhaps the final element is, elsewhere in the region, they're talking about source markets, and they're talking about the region as a source market which has been overlooked, and as in the Caribbean region, and a domestic market that has perhaps been overlooked and should be looked at. Now, that domestic market may not be at your $150 RevPAR, but it may be still attractive as a short-term fix. And have there been any efforts to look at that within the Dominican tourism sector?
Well, first, let me address the airline issue, which is probably the largest of the three issues that you raised. We envision that it is going to be choppy flying for airlines for quite some time, and but we have seen that the larger economies of the world have come to the aid of the larger airlines of the world, and they will survive. There will probably be a process of mergers, and there will also be an increased presence of governments in the ownership of airlines in the coming months. and both processes really bid for the airline industry to remain. I am concerned about airlines in Latin America, where the governments have not come to the aid of their airlines at all. And well, you can see, major airlines like LATAM and Avianca are already in some form of receivership, and that hurts. That hurts. The other element to this is that probably airlines. This will be a good time to start an airline. because the supply of planes is going to be there, and the adventurous entrepreneurs with some capital left over will be able to take advantage of that. And for the Dominican Republic, that would be like going back to the 80s, when 85-90% of our tourism arrived on charters, and these charter companies were all startups. They were all startups. Even some that are very well established today were just startups then. So I think that there will be a solution to the airline situation will come from a combination of airlines that have been saved by governments and new airlines coming in as startups. And that really probably means that there will be less scheduled service and more charter service, especially in the long haul markets. But that'll be where we go, I think. There is an element of the environmental question of travel, of air travel, and particularly long haul travel. Again, I am counting on technology to address that situation. If we think about it, I mean, we think the airline industry has come a long way in reducing its footprint. Nevertheless, it needs to come even further, and that is a challenge and an opportunity, I think. With respect to cruises, the future of the cruising product is still very, very unclear. Very, very unclear, because it seems like they would have to undergo a fundamental redesign of their product, which is their ship. And it is really very, very fundamental. I mean, and if we're going to be talking about having to reduce passenger load by 50 or 60%, that does not make sense in the numbers that I know today. So cruises are going to be understudy for a longer time than the rest of the industry. And finally, the regional markets. Regional markets are an opportunity. Domestic markets are very limited in the Caribbean. Dominican Republic is probably the only destination that can say that it has a domestic market, but it is a very fickle market because of its seasonality, because it is a peak of very short weekends, and that it's interesting. It's great to have this business, but you cannot rely on this business because the economics of full occupancy on Saturday nights and the doldrums the rest of the week don't make sense. So you know, that is where it is. I think where there is an opportunity is for the regional markets, and there is an opportunity, and there is also a need. The opportunity lies, of course, in the fact that yes, we have not. It has been so impossibly unbearable, uncomfortable to travel in the Caribbean, within the Caribbean, that the consumer has just not accepted that as a possibility. It just makes no sense for anyone to go on holiday coming from Barbados to Punta Cana. It'll take 2 days to get there, and and the rest is, well, we've all traveled in the Caribbean. You know, having to fly to Panama to come from Aruba to Santo Domingo, these kinds of things. But that is an opportunity. But I think the important element of that opportunity is that what we do need is intra-Caribbean flights, intra-Caribbean air service, and a really efficient system. And if they probably come hand in hand, they will need a lot of government support, I think. And we are going to have to come to an agreement on the hub and spoke system that would be most efficient in the Caribbean. And that is going to be a complicated political discussion to have, but I think it's worth having anyways. And you know, I think we have to let the technicians take the geographics of the Caribbean and design a system that is attractive to all. And I think that will happen. That will happen. Probably if we manage to get our heads together in the Caribbean, as we've tried for many, many times, and I think COVID is going to make us be more creative one more time, I think that we will be able to come up with a solution like that.
Well, that's very heartening to hear. And we hosted a webinar 2 weeks ago with Vincent van der Poel Wallace, who you all know well, I'm sure, yes. Who very much had the same spirit, that there was an opportunity on both sides here, and that a regional aviation model was long overdue. And perhaps the demise of LIAT is an opportunity to relook at all of these things and see how a better solution can be found for the future.
Exactly.
To bring in some of your attendees, and we've got lots of questions and people asking questions. Before I do, let me just tell you the results of the poll, and perhaps when you reply to some of the speakers, the questions, you can just give any comments on that poll. 17% of the people participating are very confident of a swift recovery for the Dominican Republic, 62% confident, 22% not very confident, and 1% not confident at all. Well, we either have a very optimistic group, or that is reflective of a broader sense of optimism across the DR. And I think that that is certainly what I would imagine to be more optimistic than the UK at the moment. But I need to do a similar kind of poll. Let's ask some of our participants to speak. Perhaps first of all, I could invite Hector Selna, who's got his hand up, to unmute his microphone and to speak. Hector, can you hear us? Oh. I think the technology maybe is not doing me any favors. How about Paula Grujon?
I believe, Chris, it's better for you to make the questions, because if we have a lot of participants, it's going to be a little bit difficult.
All right. Well, I'll do it instead then. So we have a question from Daniel Mata. What would the panelists advise for small entrepreneurs in regard of business opportunities and risks?
Well, maybe my 2 cents on that question is that things won't be the same. And that's something that we have to acknowledge and recognize. We're living on a new normal, new world. And as Simon mentioned that he had to adjust his forecast from 60 days ago, we will have to do the same with regards to the future. Things won't be the same. So businesses must adapt to this new reality. There are 2 sides. One is external, and we completely support all the programs that can come from government in order to support SMEs to make that transition within this reality without losing additional jobs, without having to close their businesses. Some of them on sectors are living in a very difficult situation. For example, restaurants, gyms, small stores, they're the most affected. People on the informal sector of our economy that have had to face this very seriously. So on one side, that's the state role to provide the resources for these people to move on. On the other side, from the business perspective, from the company, we have to be more creative and innovative than ever. It's the moment to adjust our model of business to this new reality and with the strength to try to move on.
Thank you. Simon, did you want to?
Well, in our sector, we are seeing a significant losses of companies, and it's particularly difficult because we are not a technology prone type of business. We are usually lag behind, and the opportunities really lie in technology. So I think that the small businesses have to look at technology to be the means to pull them out of the situation, and wait for the government to support, because that is really where the capital must come initially.
Can I ask you both, do you see a change in approach with the new government in terms of the way they're handling both the lockdown and the economic support to businesses, or is it too early to say?
We faced an unfortunate coincidence having this pandemic and a political process in effect. So the combination of both was lethal. It was very, very, very negative, because some of the measures that had to be taken were seen from a political perspective and not necessarily from what we required. And that goes to all colors of the system, to all parties. No, it's not a reference to one, but I think it's responsible to say that unfortunately we went through the initiation of this crisis in the middle of a political process. However, what we've seen after the elections of July 5th is a coordination. We've seen a smooth transition. We've seen that the main decisions are being taken in coordination, and those are good signals. And that's something that I think many countries in the world would like to have, opposition and government collaborating within a common purpose. And that's what we expect, that 3-4 weeks from now, when we have a new government, all political sectors can contribute, and social sectors and the private sector also contribute to most of these actions.
I think there is a national consensus of the steps that have to be taken, and I sense that we now that the elections are behind us, it is quite clear what the next steps have to be, and that collaboration that is being seen right now is very positive. And I would say also that I will say it because Cesar, who is responsible, didn't say it. I think that the private sector is solidly behind a proactive role in resolving the situations.
Can I ask if Elizabeth or Francesca want to comment at all on?
We have an interesting question, and I think Christina is the best one to answer about your presentation. What are the investments that UK is considering to provide for the Dominican Republic? Are there some specific calls for proposals in agribusiness, agricultural, entrepreneurship, green finance?
Hello, yes. I think I think the best way to say that is that UKEF is a credit agency that's open to any business, and there needs to be within that a 20% UK involvement in those projects. But the idea is that no business that is looking to export or to work in the Dominican Republic should fail. So what we would want to do with that is to ensure that collaboration is the key part and capacity building. But certainly in particularly in the infrastructure, that agribusiness, that agricultural, those would absolutely be there. For green finance, there's the Green Finance Institute that I recommend consulting with and looking at. They have some really interesting initiatives that they do, and the City of London as well as a centre to bring together those that are interested in green finance in particular. I'd also encourage to have a look at the trade for development, and as Rebecca alluded to at the beginning, the partnerships, particularly with the Caribbean. So all those are about ensuring that, in particular, the trade for development, to ensure that supply chains are open, that important goods can be moved, whether such as agricultural goods, and to support and to alleviate poverty. So there are a diverse amount, and they cover pretty much all of those. But I would recommend looking at those areas. So Green Finance Institute, thinking about UKF, and looking at the City of London and who they work with as well.
If I can come in with a shameless plug from the embassy and just say, please do follow our social media. We do activities, we promote the things that we're doing. We go out and talk to all of our good friends, many of whom are on this call today, including CRD and Conep, and of course the organisers today, BritchamDR, do a fantastic job as well in supporting those links between the UK and the Republic. So some shameless promotion there, but yes, all of those organisations are great entries.
It seems to me that there's a very interesting question which has been addressed by one of the questions put forward to us before this panel, which is around how the global investment climate is changing, and where there may be opportunities for the Dominican Republic to take advantage of its proximity to major North American markets. And over the last 20 years, really geographic proximity has become less and less important. People have been moving all their supply chains to China and the Far East. But as trade wars start to happen, as things like COVID start to illustrate that actually distance can matter, and also you want resilience in your supply chain, so you don't want to be wholly dependent on one source of manufacturing in the Far East. People are reopening their plans and saying, how do we address these for the longer term? And that ranges from manufacturing for textiles and other types of clothing goods. It also is things like call centers and back office processing. So I think there are attractive investment opportunities that come out of that. And I wondered whether you're seeing investment from the private sector and the DR into those sectors, or potential openings to partnerships where there may be some investment opportunities in those areas.
I think, Chris, that's a very interesting comment, one that you're making, because with COVID or without COVID, with or without the sanitary situation, the Dominican Republic is still a country with 5, well, now 6, including the new post-Brexit agreement with the UK, but 6 trade agreements with preferential access to 49 countries, and with near-shoring opportunities for many companies. So what we're seeing in the near future is precisely more interest in establishing in the Dominican Republic operations to serve the U.S. market, who keeps being our main trade partner, also to having a more favorable trade relation with our closest neighbor, Haiti, to having a more effective use of our trade relation with the EU and with the UK. So that's something that goes beyond the sanitary situation, because there will always be demand. We've seen the numbers of the WTO. We've seen that their projections is a reduction of around 32% of global trade this year. That's something huge. It has not been seen after World War II. And we are we're experiencing part of the effects of this situation. But what we see in the near future is more nearshoring, and that platform of trade agreements that the Dominican Republic has will be in benefit of considering this location.
Any of the rest of you want to comment on that? Okay, well, I'm conscious that we're coming to the end of our time. I think there's one last question that has been asked by one of our attendees. Perhaps I could also just get you each to quickly comment on the findings of the poll and see if you agree with what the majority says or you have a different view. I think Simon's already told us, and he's the economist, that he thinks it's a U-shape. The question is, are there any ideas of bailout funds for certain sectors? And I guess this will be a question for the new government, but I mean, any kind of thoughts on that? And then perhaps if each of you could quickly comment on optimism or pessimism in terms of economic confidence.
Yes, I think that the main characteristic of this crisis is the uncertainty. So there have been decisions all throughout the process, depending on which stage we are living. At first, when I mentioned that we had our first case in March, it was the immediate shock, the immediate reaction to the restrictions and to the problems that we were facing at that stage, initial stage. Then we've seen how to get comfortable or at least adapt to this new reality. But for example, with decisions that have to deal with the financial system or to support directly to companies, now we have to pass to a new stage. It's not only reacting to the crisis, but it's also searching for the stabilization of the whole process. And that's what we must see from now. There have not been official discussions on bailout funds. There have been discussions on creating a guarantee fund for SMEs for quick access, and resources are available on the financial system, but the guarantee fund in order to facilitate that access is still required. And for medium and even big enterprises, having more resources on the table and taking other decisions that have to do with the tax system are required from this stage on. And as you mentioned, maybe this is part of the agenda of the new government.
Well, I would like to begin by mentioning the poll, and especially since I am one of those who tries to put realism before optimism. What I did not mention is that it is quite well documented that after a downturn curve in the tourism industry, the recovery is extremely accelerated, and we have seen the recovery of tourism after 9/11, after the 2008 recession. Regardless of the shape of the bottom of the curve, once the inflection point changes, then you have an almost vertical recovery process. And I anticipate that it will happen the same. There is all sorts of sociological theories as to why is that the case, and how pent up travel demand builds up and actually explodes once the circumstances allow it to explode. So while I am looking at a protracted U curve, I know that once that U curve turns, it'll be very, very quick, very, very quick. With regards to funding, I have been calling for an early involvement of the Dominican government in a wide-angled approach to economic support to the various sectors of the Dominican economy, and that I don't think has had much resonance definitely in the government. Basically, because we've been in a political situation where the decisions of this nature would be long term. Now that the political situation has cleared, we're beginning to see, and Jacqueline's remarks mention things like the possibility of very close IMF support through an extended period of years, and which is what I have been saying when I put my economist hat, which I don't wear usually. But I always say, you know, this is the moment for deficit spending. We've got to finance the deficit spending, and we have to be very, very careful and intelligent on how we spend those monies. But we have got to do it, and we've got to do it now. We've got to prime the pump, I should say. and so I am bullish on that aspect of the recovery. I think that we will be ready for a very active pursuit of foreign capital, outside capital, to support the economy. I just pray that it is quick, because there are people whose paychecks need to be supported in 2 weeks' time, basically. Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone of you wants to address anything else, or should you ready?
Just my reaction to the poll. Indeed, we're living in a very difficult time, and we have to be sincere enough to recognize what we're facing, but we have to be optimistic. And I think that if we take into account a process of comparison with the rest of the countries, we have a lot of advantages that will permit us to move on. That does not mean it's minimizing what we're facing, but we have to be optimistic with regards to the future.
And I think I would say very much the same, wholeheartedly. I think it's been a fascinating event. I'd just like to say thank you so much to all of you. I've learned a huge amount. I am not fool enough to make any economic predictions coming after Simon and Jacqueline, but I think the poll reasserts a lot that I hope I said at the start about the huge potential Dominican Republic has. I think for all of us around the world, the question is not just when can we recover, how we do it, and how we make that recovery a building back in a whole new, stronger way that keeps us sustainable for the future. There will be other crises in the future. We all know the one on the horizon of climate change. And I think the resilience that we've shown around the world in coping with this one, and our chance to build back with a sustainable future, is going to help us for the many years to come.
Indeed.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, and thank you to all of you. Perhaps if I just say couple of last remarks, just in summing up. It's certainly what I've taken away from today is that, like all of us, the DR is a ship being tossed about in difficult, stormy waters at the moment. But it seems that you've gone through, the decisions that need to be taken have been taken. And is being well managed. You've managed to get through an election cycle in the middle of one of the most difficult situations that has come across DR or across the world since the Second World War, and a positive handover, which is amazing. Whilst you have, I suppose, higher numbers in the Caribbean than other Caribbean jurisdictions. Your numbers are very, very low compared to the UK. I was rather staggered when you said, I think your total death toll was around 1,000 people. At the peak of our worst days here in the UK, that was happening every day, 1,000 people. So it shows you, the extent of which, how bad it could have been. And certainly the Caribbean has been lauded in the UK, and on the BBC, they've pointed to the Caribbean as being a great success story of having acted fast and having done well in limiting the spread. And I think the Dominican Republic is no exception to that. The confidence that's demonstrated in the poll, I think, is obviously reiterated by some of Simon's comments around the tourism sector and around also the positive noises coming out of the remittance figures and those discussions with the IMF. And I think there's lots of reasons to be positive about the DR. I think the fundamentals are right. And as soon as the sanitary situation is resolved, I think the DR will take off again like a rocket. Thank you very much to all of our panelists for such fascinating and interesting discussion and presentations. And thank you very much to Francesca and her team and all at the British Dominican Chamber of Commerce. It's been a pleasure to work with you on this and to update our long-standing relationship since the 1980s in a new digital virtual world. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the day, everybody. Thank you.